High Commander Ridge stood at the observation deck of the Stalker command ship, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he watched the burning remains of yet another conquered world through the massive view screen. The flames of destruction reflected in his amber eyes, bringing a satisfied smile to his face. This was the 15th species his people had hunted to submission this cycle alone. "Another successful hunt, High Commander," said Scout Commander Stone, approaching with a respectful bow. His footsteps echoed across the polished black floor of the command deck. "The prey species has officially surrendered. They're signing the submission treaties as we speak." Ridge turned slowly, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the command deck. The skull-shaped shoulder plates, taken from the first prey he had ever killed, clicked softly as he moved. "Was there ever any doubt, Stone? We are the Stalkers, the galaxy's apex predators. No species has ever stood against us and survived." Around them, other Stalker officers worked at their stations, their scaled skin reflecting the blue glow of their control panels. Each wore at least one trophy from their kills, following the ancient traditions of their people. The more decorated officers displayed entire collections of bones and teeth from various species they had helped hunt down. "Of course not, High Commander," Stone replied, his own armor more modest but still impressive. "Though I must report something interesting from our long-range scouts." Ridge's interest peaked. "Interesting? Do tell." Stone activated a holographic display in the center of the command deck. A spiral galaxy map appeared, rotating slowly in the air between them. One arm of the galaxy blinked with a red marker. "We've detected signals from an unexplored sector," Stone explained, zooming in on the blinking area. "A new species has achieved faster-than-light travel. They call themselves humans." Ridge circled the hologram, studying it with predatory focus. "Tell me about these humans." "They're from a planet they call Earth. They've only had FTL capability for about 5 of their solar cycles, but they're expanding rapidly. They've already established colonies on several worlds." The High Commander's expression showed mild amusement. "Aggressive expansion for such a young species. They'll make an entertaining hunt. What are their defenses like?" Stone hesitated for a moment before answering. "That's the interesting part, sir. They maintain significant military forces, even though they haven't encountered any other species yet. They seem to be expecting trouble." This drew laughs from several nearby officers, and Ridge joined in with a deep, rumbling chuckle. "Paranoid prey is nothing new, Stone. Remember the grazing ones? They had built orbital defense platforms around every colony. Fat lot of good it did them against our hunting fleets." Stone nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Yes, sir. But these humans, they're different. Our initial scans show they're from a death world. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, aggressive fauna." "Even better," Ridge interrupted, his smile growing wider. "The strong ones always provide the best sport and the best trophies." He touched the skull on his shoulder meaningfully. "Prepare the hunting fleets. We'll give these humans a proper welcome to the galaxy." "Sir," Stone tried one more time, "perhaps we should observe them longer before." "Your caution is noted, Scout Commander," Ridge cut him off, his voice carrying a slight edge. "But we are stalkers. We do not hide in shadows when there is prey to be hunted. Send word to the fleet. In 3 cycles, we hunt." As Stone bowed and left to carry out his orders, Ridge turned back to the view screen, watching the last embers of their latest conquest fade into darkness. Soon, another world would burn. Another species would kneel. The humans would learn, as all others had learned, that in this galaxy, the Stalkers reigned supreme. He had no way of knowing that this hunt would be different, that for the first time in their history, the Stalkers were about to become the prey. Scout Commander Stone's ship hung silently in the darkness of space, its stealth systems making it virtually invisible against the backdrop of stars. Through the observation window, he watched the blue-green planet called Earth rotating slowly below. This was his third day of observation, and what he had seen so far troubled him deeply. "Play the recording again," he ordered his crew. The main screen flickered to life, showing footage captured earlier that day. It displayed what the humans called a military exercise. The images showed human soldiers moving through dense forest terrain. They carried weapons, moved in coordinated groups, and communicated using hand signals. Nothing unusual for a primitive species, except for how they moved. These humans didn't charge forward like proper warriors. They didn't showcase their strength. Instead, they crawled through mud, hid behind trees, and set elaborate traps. "Pause there," Stone commanded, pointing at a particular frame. "Look at their eyes." His second-in-command, Track, leaned forward to study the image. "What about them, Commander?" "Those aren't the eyes of prey," Stone said quietly. "I've hunted 1,000 species across this galaxy. Prey species have wide-set eyes, good for spotting danger. These humans, their eyes face forward, like predators." Track shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "But they're so soft. No claws, no natural armor, not even decent teeth. Surely they can't be." A new alert flashed across their screens, interrupting him. Stone quickly brought up the feed. It showed a different part of the planet, where humans were conducting what appeared to be combat training in a desert environment. They watched as human soldiers moved through punishing heat, carrying heavy packs, pursuing targets for hours without rest. "Look at their endurance," Stone muttered. "We've been watching them for 3 full rotations of their planet. These training exercises haven't stopped once. They just switch teams and continue." The footage shifted to orbital views, showing human warships conducting their own exercises. Their formations were unusual, nothing like the proud displays of power that other species used. These ships moved like they were hunting, using asteroids and planetary bodies for cover, striking from unexpected angles. Stone's communicator chirped, signaling an incoming message from High Command. He accepted it, and High Commander Ridge's hologram appeared before him. "Report, Scout Commander. Tell me about our next prey." Stone chose his words carefully. "Sir, I recommend we delay the hunt. These humans, they're not like our usual prey. They have unusual capabilities that we should study further." Ridge's hologram showed his displeasure clearly. "Unusual how? Are they stronger than us? Faster? Better armed?" "No, sir. It's their behavior. They fight like hunters. They use tactics we've never seen before. They—" "Enough." Ridge's voice boomed through the command center. "I didn't ask for your fears, Stone. I asked for a report on our prey. Are they or are they not capable of stopping a full stalker hunting fleet?" Stone looked down at his latest scan data. The humans' technology was indeed primitive compared to the stalkers. Their ships were slower, their weapons less powerful. By any measurable standard, they should be easy prey. So why did he feel such dread? "No, sir," he finally answered. "Their technology is no match for ours." Then the hunt proceeds as planned. Return to the fleet immediately. As Ridge's hologram vanished, Stone turned back to the view screen, watching another group of humans conducting warfare drills. They moved through their exercise with practiced precision, every movement purposeful and controlled, like they had been preparing for war their entire lives. "Send one last probe to the surface," he ordered. "I want to know everything about their history before we begin this hunt." As his ship turned to leave Earth's orbit, Stone couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. For the first time in his long career as a hunter, he felt something alien and uncomfortable. Doubt. The stalker hunting fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their ships casting long shadows across the void. 500 warships strong, it was the largest hunting party assembled in the past 100 cycles. High Commander Ridge stood proudly on his command ship, watching as his fleet moved into attack formation. "Launch the first wave," he ordered. "Let's show these humans how the galaxy's apex predators go to war." The first wave of stalker ships surged forward, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. They approached Earth's outer defense line, weapons charged and ready. Victory was assured. It always was. But something was wrong. "Sir," one of his officers called out, "we're not detecting any human ships in the defense zone. Our scans show their orbital platforms are unmanned." Ridge frowned. This wasn't how prey species usually behaved. They typically gathered their forces to defend their homeworld. Continue the advance. They must be hiding behind their moon. The first wave of ships passed Mars, then the asteroid belt. Still no resistance. The silence was unsettling. Suddenly, alarms blared across the command deck. Multiple contacts. The sensor officer shouted, "Human ships appearing behind us." Ridge spun around as the tactical display updated. Somehow, the humans had hidden their fleet by masking their engine signatures. Now they were emerging from the shadow of Jupiter and its moons, cutting off the stalker's retreat path. "Impossible," Ridge snarled. "How did they know we were coming?" He turned to his communications officer. "Order the first wave to engage." But before the order could be given, space itself seemed to erupt. Hidden mines planted throughout the asteroid belt detonated in sequence, creating a cascade of explosions that trapped the front half of the stalker fleet in a debris field. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking, "the humans are using the debris as cover. They're hunting our ships one by one." On the main view screen, Ridge watched in disbelief as human vessels darted through the chaos with surprising agility. They didn't fight like any prey species he had ever hunted. Their ships moved in small packs, coordinating their attacks, striking from multiple angles, then disappearing back into the debris field. "Launch all fighters," Ridge commanded. "Full attack formation." That's when the second part of the human trap was sprung. From the surface of Mars, hidden defense platforms emerged from the red sands, their weapons already firing. The stalker fighters found themselves caught in a deadly crossfire between the platforms and the human fleet. "Sir," his second-in-command reported grimly, "we've lost contact with 30% of the first wave. The humans are using some kind of electronic warfare we've never seen before." Ridge slammed his fist on the command console. This was all wrong. Prey species didn't set traps. They didn't hunt the hunters. They didn't. New contact. The sensor officer shouted. Massive energy signature approaching from Earth's moon. The dark side of the moon lit up as hundreds of additional human warships appeared, led by a massive vessel that dwarfed anything in the stalker fleet. Its hull bore the name Humanity's Shield. A transmission cut through their communications channels. A human voice, calm and steady, spoke. "This is Captain Thomas of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space and initiated hostile action against Earth and her colonies. We've been expecting you. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we show you how humans wage war." Ridge stared at the tactical display in shock. The humans had not only anticipated their attack, they had prepared for it, planned for it, set a trap for the galaxy's greatest hunters. For the first time in his life, High Commander Ridge felt a cold sensation in his chest that he would later learn had a human name. Fear. 3 days after the disastrous first battle, the remains of the Stalker fleet limped through hyperspace, running from the relentless pursuit of human warships. On the bridge of his command ship, High Commander Ridge watched the tactical display with growing horror as another distress signal winked out. "That's the 5th ship we've lost today," his tactical officer reported. "The humans, they're not just following us. They're tracking our exact jump points." Stone, who had been brought aboard after his scout ship was damaged, stepped forward. "They're using our own engine signatures against us. Every time we jump, we leave a trail they can follow." Ridge's claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. "Impossible. No prey species has ever been able to." "Sir," Stone interrupted, "something no stalker would have dared do a week ago. We need to stop thinking of them as prey. The humans aren't running. They're hunting us." The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. They had hoped to lose their pursuers in this dense asteroid field, but Ridge could already see from the tactical display that it was another mistake. Multiple contacts, the sensor officer shouted. Human ships emerging from the asteroids. Through the main viewport, Ridge watched as human vessels appeared from their hiding places among the rocks. They had been waiting, predicting where the stalkers would emerge. New transmission from the human flagship, the communications officer announced. Captain Thomas's voice filled the bridge again, still carrying that unnervingly calm tone. Your ships are damaged. Your supplies are running low. You can't outdistance us, and you can't outfight us. Surrender now. Ridge snarled and cut the transmission. Launch our remaining fighters. We are stalkers. We do not surrender to prey. But as their fighters launched, the humans demonstrated yet another terrible surprise. Small one-man craft emerged from their ships, faster and more maneuverable than anything the stalkers had ever encountered. They call them fighter pilots, Stone explained, watching the slaughter begin. Humans who train their entire lives to fight in space, they can endure forces that would knock our pilots unconscious. The battle was horrifically one-sided. The human pilots flew with impossible precision, using the asteroids as cover, emerging from blind spots to strike, then vanishing again. They moved like pack hunters, calling targets for each other, setting up killing shots with practiced ease. Sir, the tactical officer's voice shook. We're detecting human ships approaching from 3 different vectors. They're hurting us. Ridge stood up, his proud posture finally breaking. Hurting us? Hurting us where? The answer came as their ship cleared the asteroid field. Ahead of them loomed a massive gas giant, its stormy surface swirling with violent colors. The humans had driven them straight into a gravity well. We can't maneuver in that gravity, Stone said quietly. They've trapped us between their fleet and the planet's pull. The ship rocked as the first human weapons found their mark. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems began to fail. Sir, his second-in-command spoke softly. What are your orders? Ridge stared at the tactical display, watching as human ships methodically cut off every escape route. They moved with the coordination of experienced hunters, using strategies that the stalkers themselves had employed against countless prey species. But the stalkers had never been this efficient, never been this precise, never been this. They're not just hunters, Ridge whispered, finally understanding. They're better hunters than we are. They always have been. He looked around his bridge, at the proud hunters who had never known defeat, and made the hardest decision of his life. Send the signal, he ordered. We surrender. As the white flag transmission went out, Ridge realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The apex predators had just become prey, and the age of humanity was about to begin. In the conference room of the human flagship, Humanity's Shield, High Commander Ridge sat with his remaining officers, watching a presentation about Earth's history. Captain Thomas stood at the front of the room, showing images that made the stalkers increasingly uncomfortable. This is what we evolved from, Thomas explained, pointing to images of early humans hunting massive beasts. While your species evolved as the apex predator of your world, we evolved competing against creatures many times our size. The next image showed humans pursuing large animals across open plains. We weren't the strongest or the fastest. We couldn't fly or swim especially well. But we had something else. Endurance. Stone leaned forward, his eyes wide. The training exercises I observed. You were practicing ancient hunting techniques. Thomas nodded. Persistence hunting. When we couldn't outfight our prey, we would follow them for days. No other animal on Earth could match our stamina. Eventually, even the strongest would collapse from exhaustion. Ridge watched silently as more images appeared. Humans hunting woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and other massive prehistoric creatures. But your bodies are so soft, he finally said. No natural weapons. We didn't need them, Thomas replied. We had these. He held up his hands. Opposable thumbs. Complex tool use. And most importantly, we had these. He tapped his temple. Brains capable of complex planning, pattern recognition, and strategic thinking. The presentation shifted to show ancient human warfare. While other species fought for dominance, we fought for survival. Every advancement, every technology, every tactic was developed because we had to outsmart things bigger and stronger than ourselves. More images followed. Humans developing spears, bows, traps, and increasingly complex weapons. We didn't just hunt for food, Thomas continued. We hunted to protect our families, our tribes, our species. We learned to work together, to plan, to think ahead. Stone suddenly stood up, realization dawning on his face. The trap you set for our fleet, you used the same techniques your ancestors used to hunt large prey. The debris field was like the tall grass hunters would hide in. The electronic warfare was like driving animals into exhaustion. Exactly, Thomas smiled. Space warfare isn't so different from ground hunting. It's all about patience, coordination, and understanding your target's behavior. Ridge felt his pride crumbling as he watched recordings of the recent battle. The human ships had moved exactly like pack hunters, pushing the stalker fleet exactly where they wanted them to go. It was a hunting technique perfected over millions of years. But how did you know we were coming? Ridge asked. How were you so prepared? Thomas's expression grew serious. Because we've been expecting something like this since we first looked up at the stars. Humanity has thousands of stories about first contact with alien species. Most of them aren't peaceful. We've been preparing for war since before we had electricity. He changed the display one final time, showing the current state of human military forces. Every weapon we've developed, every strategy we've created, comes from millions of years of being both predator and prey. We learned to hunt because we had to. We learned to fight because we had no choice. Ridge looked at his fellow stalkers, seeing the same realization in their eyes. Their species had evolved as unchallenged apex predators, growing complacent in their power. Humans had evolved fighting for every advantage, never taking survival for granted. Now you understand, Thomas said quietly, why your attack was doomed from the start. You're excellent hunters, but you hunt like predators who have never known fear. We hunt like predators who remember being prey. The room fell silent as the stalkers finally understood the full truth. They hadn't just encountered another species, they had encountered the ultimate hunters, shaped by evolution to be the perfect combination of predator and prey. And for the first time in their history, the stalkers knew what it meant to be hunted. The stalker homeworld's orbital defense stations lit up with warning signals as the human fleet appeared at the edge of their system. But unlike the usual bold displays of power that attacking forces used, these ships emerged silently from dozens of different vectors, using the system's asteroid fields and gas giants for cover. In his command bunker on the planet's surface, Ridge watched the tactical display with growing dread. The humans weren't just attacking. They were hunting. They're using our own hunting grounds against us, Stone said, pointing at the display. The human ships were hiding in the same spots that stalker vessels had used to ambush prey species for centuries. Above them, the battle had already begun. But it wasn't like any battle the stalkers had ever fought. The human ships struck from shadows, disabled key defense systems, and vanished before counterattacks could be launched. They weren't trying to overwhelm the stalker defenses. They were taking them apart piece by piece. Sir, a communications officer called out, we're getting reports from the outer colonies. Human forces are attacking there too. They're copying our hunting tactics, but making them better. Ridge watched as another defense station went dark. The humans had studied every recording of stalker hunting techniques, learned their patterns, and turned those very same strategies against them. But where the stalkers had always relied on brute force and terror, the humans added layers of precision and patience that made their attacks devastatingly effective. Launch everything we have, Ridge ordered. We must protect the homeworld. But as their ships rose from the surface, the true genius of the human strategy became clear. Captain Thomas's voice came through on all channels. Thank you for showing us your remaining fleet strength. Now we know exactly what we're dealing with. The human ships suddenly changed formation. What had looked like a scattered attack force transformed into a coordinated net, closing in from all directions. They had waited for the stalkers to commit their forces before revealing their true numbers. How? Ridge demanded, watching his ships being systematically cornered and disabled. How are they always one step ahead? Stone's answer was quiet. Because they're not fighting this war. They're hunting us, just like their ancestors hunted on Earth. They studied us, learned our patterns, and set up their kill zone with perfect patience. The tactical display showed the human fleet's final push. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, herding the stalker vessels into killing zones, cutting off escape routes, and picking off targets with surgical precision. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "Captain Thomas is requesting your surrender. He says they don't want to destroy us. They want to teach us." Ridge stared at the display in disbelief. Even now, with total victory in their grasp, the humans weren't acting like typical conquerors. They were offering mercy, something the stalkers had never done with their prey. "They want to teach us?" he asked, confused. "Yes, sir. They say we have potential. That we can learn to be better hunters. Better people." Through the bunker's viewport, Ridge could see human dropships landing in the capital city. Their troops moved with the same practiced efficiency he had seen in Stone's early reconnaissance footage. Every movement had purpose. Every action was calculated. Looking at his officers, Ridge saw his own revelation reflected in their eyes. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They had shown them a better way to hunt, a better way to live. "Send the signal," Ridge ordered for the second time in his life. Tell them we're ready to learn." As he watched human soldiers securing the capital with practiced efficiency, Ridge realized that the age of the stalkers wasn't ending. It was evolving. And their greatest enemies would become their greatest teachers. 1 year after the surrender of the stalker homeworld, Ridge stood on the observation deck of the newly built Galactic Council chamber. Below him, representatives from dozens of species, both former hunters and prey, gathered for the first time as equals. "Strange to see them all together like this, isn't it?" Stone asked, joining his former commander at the window. They both wore the new diplomatic uniforms that had replaced their hunting armor, though Ridge still kept his first trophy skull on display in his office as a reminder of the past. "The prey species we once hunted now sit at the same table as us," Ridge mused, watching a group of the formerly timid grazing ones confidently presenting their trade proposals. "And we're better for it." Captain Thomas, now Admiral Thomas, approached them with a warm smile. The human's presence no longer inspired fear in Ridge, but rather a deep respect. "The Trade Federation is working better than we hoped," Thomas said. "Turns out, when species work together instead of hunting each other, everyone prospers." Ridge nodded, remembering the lessons of the past year. The humans hadn't just defeated the stalkers, they had transformed them. Human military advisors had taught them new ways of thinking, new approaches to problems. They learned that true strength came not from dominating others, but from building something greater together. "The hunting fleets are all converted now?" Thomas asked. "Yes," Stone replied. "The last of them completed their refit last week. They're exploration vessels now, seeking out new life instead of new prey." He smiled slightly. "Though we kept some of the old tactical systems, the galaxy can still be dangerous." Through another window, they could see a joint human stalker patrol ship departing. The two species had discovered they worked remarkably well together once they got past their initial conflicts. Stalker strength combined with human strategy made for an unbeatable peacekeeping force. "The latest survey from the Outer Rim just came in," Thomas said, checking his datapad. 3 new spacefaring species discovered. In the old days, they would have been seen as prey. Now they'll be welcomed as equals. Ridge felt a deep satisfaction at these words. The stalkers had learned that being the galaxy's apex predators had made them stagnant. It was their defeat at human hands that had forced them to evolve, to grow, to become something better than mere hunters. "Have you seen the latest training exercises?" Stone asked. "The younger stalkers are already adapting human persistence hunting techniques to space combat simulations. They're becoming better hunters than we ever were." "But with a purpose now," Ridge added. "To protect, not to dominate. To guide, not to conquer." They watched as more delegates arrived for the council session. Species that once would have fled from each other now engaged in animated discussion about trade routes and cultural exchange programs. The galaxy was changing, growing, evolving into something none of them could have imagined before. "You know what the strangest part is," Ridge said quietly. "We thought we were the greatest hunters in the galaxy because we had never known fear. But it was the humans, who knew fear intimately, who proved to be the greatest hunters of all. They taught us that understanding fear, both feeling it and causing it, makes you stronger, not weaker." Thomas placed a hand on Ridge's shoulder, a human gesture of friendship that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "The best hunters aren't the ones who never know fear," he said. "They're the ones who face it, learn from it, and grow beyond it." As the council chamber filled and the session prepared to begin, Ridge looked out at the changed galaxy and felt something he had never known in his hunting days: hope. The age of predator and prey was over. The age of cooperation and growth had begun. And it all started because the deadliest hunters in the galaxy met humans and learned what it truly meant to hunt.